Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week. Welcome back. Today, we are looking at one of my favourite World Cups, Italy '90, and more specifically, the Battle of Rimini, when England's hooligan army battled against the Falange d'Assalto Biancorossa Rimini Ultras that had also teamed up with hundreds of locals with the Polizia di Stato, state police, and the Carabinieri, a military police force. Also only too happy to give English lads a good old-fashioned clump, inflicting as much damage as possible. As usual, we will hear from football lads that was actually there, and we will also look at media reports and articles. Let's jump straight in. It was a bit boring in Sardinia. The local police just gave everyone a hard time, and it pissed off most of the 30 Mansfield lads out there. A lot of them ran out of money and went home after the first round. There had been bits of bother with rival English lads, but everything had been blown out of proportion by the press back home, as it always does. A few of us got caught up in the tear gas episode before the Holland game, and we were all forced to sit down on the forecourt of a petrol station with loads of others, while the rest of the English just gave the Carabinieri the runaround. It was a good laugh. We were all sat there while everyone else is just throwing everything they can get their hands on at the Carabinieri. The Dutch completely bottled it, and the only bother was with a few Irish in bars and the local police. And there were plenty of stories going around that some English lads had been taking truncheons off the old bill and battering them with them. Another story concerned an English lad taking a gun which had rubber bullets off its owner, which had the local cops on their toes. There must have been over 2,000 English involved that day, and some of ours ended up near a wedding that got ruined when the rioters ploughed through the wedding party as they were all getting photographed, which was a shame. But who in their right mind would get married in a town the day we played Holland? Italy '90 was one of the first trips that saw a large mob from Shrewsbury. Neil and Brendan were just teenagers when they made their journey to Sardinia. Let's hear from Brendan and his story of the World Cup. From his point of view, with the English border front, Shrewsbury's very underrated firm. The following are Brendan's words. One of our first trips abroad was to Sardinia. There was about 25 to 30 Shrewsbury there in the end. But we played it safe, and all went in little gangs to keep out of the way of the police. We went in a group of 6, but only 3 of us came back as planned, as the rest of them got deported after doing 2 weeks in jail. We went all around Europe on the way to Italy, left a week early as police had raided my house, Paris, Barcelona on the intercity, and we got to Sardinia 5 days before the Ireland game. That's where I met Spence from Oldham. He came off the train, and as soon as he saw us, he asked us where we were from. We got on, and that was the start of our friendship with Oldham and Newcastle. It wasn't all handshakes though. On the way out there, we were sailing from Marseille to Sardinia, and a few forest lads started on us, and it kicked off, which resulted in the disco getting shut down, which messed the journey up for a bit. It was a one-off that, as in those days, we never used to argue against each other that much. We were looked at as a small firm from a stupid small village, and nobody bothered us. We would meet Chelsea, West Ham, Spurs, Newcastle, and get on fine. It kicked off in a nightclub over there. My mates got nicked, so I ended up sleeping at this Italian's house. It was a mad situation. I was only 16, lost on some Italian island, wandering pissed up when this lad noticed my English bulldog tattoo and said, "Are you English hooligan?" "Why?" I said. "You can stay at my house." Yeah, okay, I am a hooligan, I said. When the lads got nicked, I was left on my own with just my rucksack. But I met some West Ham lads who were good to me, sorted me tickets for the games, and kept an eye on me. I remember we had met a couple on the boat who were going on holiday to Sardinia. Nothing to do with the football. A weird couple of goths from Bristol. On the day we played Holland, we were all mobbing up at the station, hundreds of us. Every firm was there. It was the biggest mob that I had ever seen. From nowhere, these goths came up to me and said, "Hi, how's the holiday, Brendan? What time does the procession start?" They thought that we were waiting to start a procession to the ground. I just had to tell that we were mobbing up for an off with the Dutch. They soon pissed off quickly. So we all mobbed up for this procession, as she called it, and then set off for the ground. Soon we saw a load of Dutch standing there, all singing, and although they were not what we were looking for, we still scattered them. Then, literally, it was just all mayhem for about 2 hours solid. We were battling with the riot police. It was going of mental. They threw tear gas at us in the end. And I will always remember this big Man City monster of a lad just picking up the tear gas canister and throwing it back at the old Bill. One of the police got stuck in the middle of England's firm and got absolutely obliterated. It just went mad. There were cars getting rolled over, a proper riot. It was an unbelievable 2 hours. When it kicked off, we got chased through all these gardens, and they were firing gas into us. I was knackered and saw this Italian woman looking out of her bedroom window. She must have felt sorry for me. She said, "Come on in." She opened the door and a load more piled in to get away from the police and the gas. Everyone just barged into the old girl's house. She was spot on and kept us inside while everyone was getting battered outside. The BBC TV crew came into the house and she told them to stop filming things. Eventually, the woman and her husband drove us to the ground for the England-Holland game. Neil from Shrewsbury said the following: "We were actually let out in time for the riot. It was crazy. We had been locked up, and I had kicked off because one of the lads was only young. I ran out of the cell and got him, and said to them that he was my brother. So they put us in this cell together and said that we were flying home that night. In the end, they just kept us for a few hours, give us loads of shit, smacked us around, then let us go to cause rampage. Every night after the game, the locals would be out waiting for us. They would turn up in little mobs, dressed in those effing denim coats, and they all came up to you waving chains and showing you their blades. It was a dangerous place if you were caught on your own, so we soon cottoned on and stuck together. One night, there was about 40 of us, and 80 of them, and I was only 17 and had no fear, so got into them with a belt I used to have tied around my sleeping bag. England were into them in seconds, and they all done it on their toes, even though they were all tooled up. It was an Italian firm over there, though not the immigrants like on mainland or in France. These were pure Italian boys, all in the Lacoste garms. Apart from a wrecked wedding, a few fights with the Irish, and the small matter of the Carabinieri getting on their toes, the group stages were hailed a success. Even the team made it to the next stages. The failure of the Dutch to show up, having decided to announce that they did not follow the national team and only represented their club sides, made it difficult for the hundreds of press holed up in Sardinia to earn their wages. So even the smallest of incidents made good reading for the thousands back home, who were led to believe weeks earlier that World War III was about to start. Elsewhere, other England lads had problems. The tournament was over for 26-year-old Chelsea lad Steve Clayton, who was shot in the back, legs and pellets after a local mob stormed a cafe bar packed out with England fans who would not pay for a pizza, and another 2 England fans were shot and 1 stabbed on the island of Corsica. Back home, 40 England fans battered a police officer in Bedford after celebrating England's victory over Egypt, while national papers took great delight in reporting that public enemy number 1, Paul Scarrett, the notorious hooligan, had been jailed until after the World Cup by Nottingham magistrates. Next stop was Bologna, where England played Belgium. En route, Rimini was the favoured destination and, not surprisingly, it was wrecked. This is what Darren from Mansfield said. Only 6 of us went on to round 2. The next game in Bologna had been designated an alcohol-free area, so word spread amongst the English to go to Rimini, the famous holiday resort. When we finally arrived, we heard that the locals were already baiting the English, and as usual, things started to get going. Some Londoners were attacked early one evening, and sporadic bits of bother occurred with lads chasing larger groups of Italians. Small groups of English were mobbing up in bars near a square just off the main seafront, but as usual the old Bill were letting the cowardly locals do anything to get a reaction from us. A mob of Leeds, who had been doing the tills in bars, and some other northerners, kicked off an incident which saw the locals petrol bomb us, but didn't stop us running them once the flames were put out and the smoke cleared. The Italian riot police showed no mercy though, and were very heavy-handed, and were very happy to nick everyone and anyone that they took a dislike to. We sought refuge in a bar, but they were happy to gas it and then batter anyone that came out for fresh air. The worst night was the eve of our game. There were hundreds of English drinking in the bars, and Italy had won their game, and as is the case over there, they all come onto the streets in their cars and on their scooters, beeping their horns and waving flags. It was bound to go off at some stage, and before long a bottle was thrown, the police were right on it, and it turned nasty with the gas and batons coming out. Loads were arrested and deported, including innocent scarfers. The following day, we went to the game, and it was a massive police overkill. No bars were open, and the tickets were on sale in a field with queues stretching back for about 4 hours. It was a disgrace, but that's how we were treated. During the game, it did kick off in the ground with the Belgians in this big neutral section, which was rare over there, but, apart from that little off, the Belgians were nowhere to be seen. The riots in Rimini were captured by the world's press and were the worst scenes of violence to be broadcast during the tournament, even though lads who were involved in Sardinia say they were actually far worse, and the media missed much of the action. In Rimini, they were able to witness some of the sickening police brutality which many innocent fans were subject to, although once again it was not reported that way. One tabloid reported that the police gassed English thugs in the Italian resort of Rimini, and that 6 fans were badly injured, as English and Italians clashed in a bar. Manchester lad Derek Burns, then aged 34, claimed that the police stormed another bar containing over 100 England and began hitting anybody in their way, which was the initial cause of over 400 English fans rampaging through the resort later. Eventually, 246 England fans were herded onto a plane and deported back to England after the riots in Rimini, and many claimed to be innocent victims of police brutality. Many were not even allowed to collect their belongings, money or passports from their hotels before flying home. Nick, a Nottingham Forest lad, gave this account. "This was my first time abroad with England, and it was mental from day one. It is quite disturbing how much happens in a few days following England. It is one incident after another. I had heard loads of tales of how mad it was, but thought to myself that some of it was far-fetched. I was wrong, and this was a mad introduction to following our national side. I flew to Rome with another Forest lad called Mush, and we then got the night train down to Naples for the Cameroon game, and somehow managed to get tickets for it. I could not believe it in the ground. The tense atmosphere, uneasy truces between lads you would normally be fighting against. In those days, out of 2,000 fans, 1,500 would be lads that were up for it. Today, we have 10,000 face-painted scarfers that follow England and a couple of hundred lads, while all the lads who fought when it mattered are on bans. These mugs, with their brass bands and foam hand clappers, frown at the few that still go, but the only reason they get away acting like panto divvies is that the reputation we gave England makes it safe for the helmets in the first place. It was a cracking game, and after looking like we were going out at one stage, we got a couple of pens and saw the game through. Spurs terrace legend Trevor Tanner had this to say: "I started on the England scene in 1990 when we went out to the World Cup. There were a lot of Spurs going with England then, but we had started to take liberties with Chelsea at around that time, and we all know that they have a massive England following, so we needed to have enough about us to go out there as a proper firm, which we did. I went out with a pal of mine and we got a flight from Gatwick, last minute sort of thing. Those last minute tickets you could buy at the airport if you were not choosy who you flew with. It only cost us 85 quid or something like that, and we slipped out to Italy unnoticed and spent about a day travelling to Turin. We were just outside Turin on our way through when we stopped at this little bar sort of thing. We were drinking, having a bit of food, nice and peaceful. Then when we came outside, a couple of bods came by on scooters, and one jumped off and pulled a blade out. I just went straight into him and picked up a piece of wood and wrote him off. It was an eye-opener, though we were minding our own business, and in a split second you could get stabbed up. I never got into the game itself, but we still had a little go at the Germans after the game, as we were all gutted that we were out. But the Germans were not in our league when it came to it." One MP, who just so happened to be on holiday in Italy at the time of the World Cup and witnessed some of the battles, was disgusted by the police brutality on England fans. So much so that he highlighted his concerns in the Houses of Parliament. This is what he had to say. I will give a brief summary of what happened. The Italy versus Uruguay match began at 9 p.m. on the 25th of July. Many English people were in Rimini, and most of them were peacefully eating meals miles away from trouble. At 9 p.m, the manager of the Rose and Crown pub received a call from the police, telling him that there would be trouble at his restaurant after the match. He did not convey that information to the people in the restaurant. He did not close his restaurant, and his customers continued to eat or drink cheerfully and innocently. 2 hours later, at 11 p.m, 300 or 400 Italian spectators arrived outside the pub celebrating Italy's victory. They bombarded the people inside the pub with missiles and stopped them from getting out. The Italian police arrived, but they did not arrest a single Italian supporter. Instead, they fired tear gas at the English people in the restaurant. They then went on a mad roundup of anyone who was English. In one of the letters to me, I have details of 5 people who were having a meal in a restaurant 5 miles away from the trouble. The Italian police arrived and asked whether anyone present was English. Not knowing what was happening, those diners said that they were English and they were taken into custody for their own protection. They were made to sit on the floor for 18 hours, 12 hours of which were spent under the heat of the Italian sun, and they were offered only 1 cup of water and 1 stale bun. They were then deported. They were put on a plane and were not allowed to stand up while on board. They could not go to the toilet unless they were accompanied by one of the 30 Italian police who were on the plane. They were hit on the head with truncheons and were made to use the toilet with the door open in the full view of the other passengers. That is a degradation of human rights, which it is the duty of this government to tackle. However, the government have done nothing about it. I have spent some time analysing where the 230 people concerned were. As I have said, 108 of them have written to me. I have found that 11 of my correspondents were in the Rose and Crown, where there was some trouble, although everybody has told me that it was not started by English people. 9 people were in the talk of the town 3 miles from Rimini, where they were arrested. 8 were in the Lord Nelson pub 2 miles away, and 10 were in other restaurants. 2 of the people involved were in their own hotel and having supper when they were taken by the police. 1 was walking along the seafront, and 2 others were 3 miles from Rimini. 6 people have told me that they were walking alone. 2 people were taken off a tram which was stopped by police who were looking for English people, and 2 were taken off a bus. I must bring those cases to the attention of the House. That is an absolute scandal, and we need to know what is going to happen as a result of that outrage. The 230 people involved were refused access to the British consul. They were hit on the head when they tried to stand up. After sitting for 18 hours, they wanted to stand to stretch their legs, but they were forbidden to do so. That is an appalling story. It is extraordinary that all those 230 people have been served with the same deportation order, which states about all those people, whether they were on buses or trams or 3 miles away in another restaurant or elsewhere. After consuming alcoholic drinks in some pubs along the seaside in Rimini, went out in the streets vandalising the town centre, clearly behaving in a way totally incompatible with the situation of the Adriatic Riviera, already crowded with numerous groups of tourists. For the overwhelming majority of those who were deported, that deportation order is an absolute lie. As other Honjon members want to speak, I will be as brief as I can. I have invited those 108 people to come to the House tomorrow, and there will be a meeting at 4 p.m. in the Grand Committee Room to which I invite ministers. Ministers have written to me and have refused to believe what those innocent people have said. However, they have not met one of them. They have not written to one of them, interviewed one of them, or answered letters from them. The 108 people concerned have written to their Hon members, including many Conservative members and to ministers, but ministers have abdicated their responsibilities. We were first told that the people concerned could not return to Italy until after the World Cup. The Falange d'Assalto Biancarossa was the primary group behind the violence in Rimini, backed up by allied smaller ultras factions. Linea Gotica, Rimini Corps, Scottish Clan, Fedain, Ghetto, Baraonda, Potere Ultra, Barafonda and Tagliatella Group were also active throughout the 80s and 90s. These groups, although smaller, contributed to the organised fan base and occasionally engaged in clashes with rival ultras. Their coordinated organisation and hostility toward foreign supporters make them the most plausible group involved. When fans clashed with the Italian police, the mayor of Turin began lobbying for the semi-final to be moved to another city if England qualified. Nobody expected them to do so. With the mayor of Turin's fears realised, England was set for their first World Cup semi-final since the year 1966, against old rivals West Germany. The setting could not have been further from the dilapidated grounds of England. The Italians' Stadio delle Alpi purpose, built for the tournament, signified all that the Italian game had become: rich, flash, and cosmopolitan. The trouble and violence didn't just take place in Italy. Back home, hundreds of English fans went on the rampage in at least 12 towns, smashing shop windows and wounding about 10 police officers after England lost to West Germany in the World Cup semi-finals. English fans vented their rage at England's defeat in the penalty shootout by chasing German students and attacking West German-made cars, police said. Scotland Yard said one of the worst incidents of about 21 reported in the London metropolitan area occurred in Cheshunt, when 300 to 400 people threw bricks, bottles, glasses and fireworks at police late Wednesday night. One officer required hospitalisation for head injuries sustained in the melee, which ended after police arrested 68 people and broke up the crowd, a Scotland Yard spokesman said. Most of those arrested were expected to appear in court on various charges. Another police officer in East London lost several teeth when someone threw a brick at his face, the spokesman said. In the resort town of Brighton, 53 miles south of London, About 200 English fans chased a group of German students, smashed store windows and looted shops. 3 police officers sustained injuries in clashes with the fans. There was serious public disorder in Brighton within minutes of England's defeat, a police spokesman said. The situation was much worse than we hoped. 20 extra police officers in riot gear were called in to assist the 60 officers trying to quell the violence in Brighton, the spokesman said. Police were forced to lock 300 German students inside nightclubs for their own safety, later arranging for buses to carry them away to safety, police said. Shortly after midnight, officers in full riot gear confronted the crowd, to which refused police calls for them to leave. 40 people were arrested. In nearby Worthing, 15 shop windows were broken and some looting was reported when about 200 people roamed the streets after the match, police said. 5 officers were hurt, including 1 constable who suffered a broken nose, and police arrested 19 people. About 50 youths smashed West German-made cars in Eltham, south-east London, police said. Police said vandals smashed shop windows in towns including Torquay, Ipswich, Stourbridge, Portsmouth and Dunstable. Soccer-related violence also was reported in Daventry and Bournemouth. Home Office spokesman said there were no overall statistics available yet on the total number of incidents following Wednesday night's match. A spokeswoman for Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said Thatcher was always appalled by mindless violence. Thatcher congratulated by West Germans in a statement Wednesday night and said she was very proud of the England team. Despite losing the penalty shot, they played a good game, the Prime Minister said, adding in that it was England's best ever performance abroad. An estimated 30 million British viewers had packed pubs and private homes across the country to watch the semi-final match in Turin, Italy. In Turin on Wednesday night, a 23-year-old German was stabbed in the back and seriously wounded when a fight broke out between rival English and German fans. Police used truncheons to disperse rowdy crowds near the city's main train station. London police dealt with 18 incidents, Scotland Yard said. Drunken fans hurled beer cans and other missiles at police. Hooligans in Grantham, 110 miles north of London, smashed windows at the Premier restaurant, in the building where Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher grew up. In nearby Worthing, police arrested 18 people after a crowd of up to 200 people smashed shop windows and looted the contents. In a pub in Blackburn, 185 miles northwest of London, 20 youths armed with pool cues attacked 2 police officers who were later treated in a hospital. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.